welcome to Poland. Yeah, they know how to party here. Welcome back for more adventure. This week I got a surprise for you. Even for me, this is kind of off the chain. Deep water, man. If you've read my books or you visit this channel, you know that most of my adventures have something to do with the mountains. Maybe the river. Certainly the wilderness. Because when I started that chapter in my retirement, I kind of got carried away with it. It started off as a 2-month trek, but then I bumped into an opportunity for more adventure, and it turned into a whole new life, which is very, very cool. Honestly, that's kind of the whole idea. You know, one adventure leads to the next. It's amazing what can happen in your life if you're open to change. But even that life, as exciting as it was, it kind of run its course. You know, I could tell it was time for change. I could tell it was time to write a new chapter. So I started sitting down and sketching out some ideas. You know, like we talked in previous episodes, I do those things. I took my paper, started writing down some ideas. You know, one thing I could be is a writer. I had finished a trilogy, the books were doing okay, and it seemed like a natural extension from what I'd been doing in the mountains. Primarily stay on my own, but I could go out and engage, you know, do some art shows or some public events, promote the books, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't very exciting, you know. Good idea, but it didn't fire me up, and that's what we talked about, right? The right adventure for you will reveal itself, and that one kind of told me, no, not yet. Another idea was to do some public speaking, do some seminars. And that was kind of exciting. You know, I wrote that down. Who do I know? I knew some guys in the business world before I came to the mountains. I'll contact them. And I contacted them and they said, great idea, Taylor. How about in the spring? In the spring, that could be a great plan. I'll go do my winter mountain man adventure, one last adventure for that chapter of my life, and then go to New York in the spring, which is what I did. March 13th, 2020. I got to New York at the same time as COVID. Yeah. Look on your calendar if you don't remember. I'll never forget it. There was hardly anybody on the plane when I was flying to New York. The next day, there was absolutely no one on the train in the city. And the day after that's when the president announced no group gatherings, which meant no seminars for Pat. All 3 of my customers called to cancel, and there was no work for me to bill against. I'd spent all my money on this project. I didn't have any money coming in. I had to get out of New York, which is what I did. I beat a hasty retreat. And it was hard. I'd had my ass beat before, and I would survive this. I knew this, but it doesn't make it any easier when you're going through those things. You know, so you just try to stay balanced. I was sitting at the airport there in New York, struggling with it. I went and got a cup of coffee, started looking at social media to distract myself, you know, and then I noticed a comment from Elzbieta. Well, I had seen Elzbieta comment on my Texas Yeti page before. It was noticeable. You know, she was one of those kind of people who said things that motivated other people to participate. And I appreciated it. I smiled and I felt it. And I thought, you know, there's something in this. I noticed her, and there's probably a reason for that. So I sent her a message. I acted on that feeling that I had. Hey, thank you for participating. I see your comments. I enjoy them. I'm glad that you're here. And you know, later that day when I landed in Salt Lake City, she had responded. I don't know what time it was in Poland, nighttime for sure. So I sent her a message back, and we chatted a little bit. Not like we fell in love right away or anything, but we talked. We became friends. And it only took a couple of months for us to realize that maybe we should learn more about each other. It'd be a good idea if we met in person. She said, I invite you to the Poland. You love the mountains. We have beautiful mountains in the Tatras. Maybe you can come for my birthday in September. So I bought a ticket. Bought a ticket to Poland, but I couldn't use it because the borders were still closed. But maybe Christmas I could go, but the borders were still closed. Spring would be a good idea, but they were still closed in spring. We didn't get to meet until July of 2021. Man, that was 400 and something days after our first conversation. And I can tell you by then, we knew that this was more than some casual relationship. We knew that we had something worth pursuing. And we decided together that it was going to be our next adventure. So in July, when I flew to Poland, I left with 2 carry-ons and a backpack. And it was not just a visit, Ella, but it was to start a new life. It was to begin a new adventure together. Pretty bold, huh? Especially for someone 65 years old. Most people don't move to a foreign country to retire. But great things happen if you're open-minded. Life treats you well if you commit to it. That's been my experience, and it's certainly my way of doing things. That was 5 years ago, and I can tell you that I haven't looked back once. There's been difficulties. There always are on adventures like this. It's a challenge. That's what makes it worthwhile. I know that sounds corny, but it's true. Some of the things I love about Poland, well, that European vibe, cobblestone streets, man, that meander through town. They're not set on a grid. They're not rigid like that. And when they work on the roads, they take these cobblestones out. And when they finish their work, they put them back in by hand. It's not paved. This isn't machine work. This is a human touch. And that appeals to me about Poland. All the little shops in town that we see. It's not one big giant grocery store. We got those, but there's also a couple vegetable shops with fruit. And then there's the meat store and bakeries all over town. There are bakeries with fresh breads and cakes, and all these things are different. All these things were exciting to me. They enriched my life. Yeah? And when we walk to town, we pass all kinds of buildings. And I don't mean like some old buildings. I mean like there's this one tower from 1278. From the 13th century. You can see the slots in the walls where they used to shoot arrows out at the invaders or those people they thought might invade. You can see this old structure as it stood then, right by the city center. And a few blocks from that, you're walking through this German architecture from the 19th century, big farmhouses and barns that survived. Of course, most of the city did not survive the Second World War. It got pounded flat. And when the Soviet Union took over, they built these block apartments, featureless. They defined communism, and they're all over this city. So all of this represents this history in town that we as Americans, we don't identify with that. We don't have anything that old. And when something starts getting old, we tear it down. Not here. Not here. They just build new stuff next to the old stuff. It's all part of their history. Another thing I love about this is the mountains are here to make me comfortable. I didn't have to leave the mountains. Just south of here, about an hour, there's a whole range of mountains that border the Czechoslovakian border. The border with the Czech Republic and with Slovakia. 2 or 3 mountain ranges across that whole stretch. We go hiking all through the year. It's organized. You can go in the winter if you want and have a great time. And all along the Czech border are these little spa towns. So this mineral water flows up out of the mountains. They build towns around these springs. And they're beautiful. They're comfortable. They're made for pedestrians and for people who go to chill out for a while. And the chilling out part, that happens kind of whether you want it to or not. I can say that that's one of the challenges. In fact, it's a problem. It's the one problem. Nobody here speaks English. Now, having lived like a hermit for the last 6 years, I can handle that okay. But not everybody would be as comfortable with that lack of communication as I am, I don't think. They just don't speak English. Ella grew up behind the Iron Curtain. It was till 1989 that this opened up to the Western world. Right? She was raised under the thumb of Soviet occupation. My wife used to have to stand in line for bread or meat with a coupon. You had to have a coupon to buy those goods, and you had to hope they had them when it was your turn to buy. They didn't speak English as a second language, man. They spoke Russian as a second language. And nobody bothered to learn English here unless you were in the big city at one of the universities. You might find some young people there that do it. But by and large, the only people that I can speak with here in town are my wife and her son. I communicate. I mean, I try. I've taken private lessons. I've always got at least one or two apps on my machine where I'm trying to learn Polish, but it's an uphill climb. I'm not sure that I'll ever be fluent with the language. I communicate well enough to buy food and to greet the locals when I go to town, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a sense of isolation. And that's part of the adventure, man. I can either let it bother me, I can either let it be a burden, a weight that wears me down, or I can put some spin on it and make it part of the excitement. And it's all about attitude. Life is all about how we look at it. I could say, oh, I'm stuck here. I got nobody to talk to. I got no friends. Or I could say, wow, man, it's like I landed on another planet. Looks exactly like the planet I came from, even the people in the stores. But nobody speaks my language. Not a soul here speaks English. I have to find other ways to communicate, like facial expressions and body language, and you can do that. I've done it. I've lived here 5 years, and I'm very, very comfortable doing that. This is my new life. This is my new adventure. So that's the backstory. That's how I went from being a mountain man, a hermit in the Frank Church wilderness, moving back to civilization, falling in love when I least expected it, and starting a whole new life in retirement. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. I did it, and you can do it too. So if you like that kind of thinking, if you like this kind of living, on purpose, then hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. And if there's something about life in Poland that you'd like to know more about, then say something in the comments. Who knows? Maybe the next episode will be for you. So till then, keep those good ideas coming. Write them down on a piece of paper and see which adventure reveals itself to you next. Thanks for being here. Always good to see you.